around the world. You take my gun, I'm going to do something about it. And I think that's what America's waiting for. They're waiting for some type of violent action from the government to respond in kind.
Yeah, I hate to do it, but I have to give the government more credit. I have to give the government more credit than I would like to. I don't think they're stupid enough to ever actually attempt to come and take the guns house to house. But I think it's going to be a constant erosion of more and more people being restricted from owning arms, starting with the veterans who, these guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan know how to use a weapon better than any of us, I'm sure. But they start throwing around the post-traumatic stress. And then people from Vietnam. And then, people, we have doctors questioning people, pediatricians questioning parents, do you have guns in the house? It just seems like it's going to be a constant erosion because they know rather than one big push, which would cause a huge backlash, they're just going to have to do it the right way and take it slow. And that's why I think people are starting to see that that's happening with, like Natalie said, that the DHS purchasing the ammo, stationing armored vehicles all across this country. It seems like they are just pre-positioning themselves, and they're just going to try to continuously erode until we've had enough, and that's when they're going to come after us at that point. But I don't think they will do anything until we say enough is enough.
Yeah.
Just my
go ahead.
So this is Victor. I'm going to take probably a little bit more pessimistic view than y'all have. I'm a bit of a student of history, and back in about 100 A.D., there was a saying in Rome, and I'm not going to read it in Latin, but translated, it says, already long ago, from when we sold our vote to no man, the people have abdicated our duties. For the people who came upon a time handed out military command, high civil office, legion, everything, now restrains itself and anxiously hopes for just two things, bread and circuses. And what that means is, y'all are familiar with the quote, is the way they basically dumb down their society and control them is instead of honoring and holding up high, lofty ideals, they just started giving people entertainment and food. And now we have over 50% of our country voting for a party that promises more bread and circuses. As long as I can get my EBT card loaded and as long as I can watch American Idol, I don't care. And what we're seeing is a rapid balkanization, both socially, politically, and culturally, in the various states. And that's why you have states like Alabama, my home state, who is just strengthening gun rights, clarifying open carry, going from a may issue to a shall issue. And then you have states like Colorado and Connecticut, which are moving completely in the opposite direction. And then you can take it take it from a micro issue of gun rights to a much macro issue of the culture in general. You look at our traditional Judeo-Christian conservative values, in some states versus, very, humanistic values in other states. You look at very conservative fiscal responsibility like we see in Texas versus a very loose fiscal responsibility like we see in Illinois and Chicago. Every time you see a country heading down this path, it doesn't end well, and a lot of people get hurt. And so I have kind of a pessimistic view, and what I tell people when they ask me about it is, stockpile your ammo, grow your garden, and stay gray. That's probably the way that people made it through, the breakup of the Balkans in the 1990s. I hope it doesn't come to that. Because I know where my line in the sand is, and I know which side I'll be on. And I think it's going to be very, very tough road to hoe. And hopefully, like Jay mentioned, we can turn it around through the ballot box and not have to go to the cartridge box. But I don't know.
That's the point that's echoed in a lot of modern literature, though. I mean, if you, I don't know if any of you have seen or read the book The Hunger Games, but it was very popular. And for those who read the series, that's exactly where the name of the capital came from, was from the quote you just mentioned,
Yes.
where the capital was called Panem because of the Latin panem for bread.
Yes.
And I think in a lot of circles there is alarm about the dumbing down, I think, of education, even of television, even of news, where everything is going to cheap entertainment. And as long as people are you know, as Pink Floyd said, terribly numb with that type of entertainment, you know, even if it's not a media venue, it's just the attitude of sitting back and not caring and not paying attention.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something that you know, I hadn't even thought of, which, you know, maybe gives me a little bit of hope. The Hunger Games trilogy, which I read and I enjoyed very much, is there's that kind of anti-establishment, you know, bread and circuses message in there. You know, kind of that pro-rebellion, standing up for yourself, you know, fighting for what's right. And that resonated with so many, you know, not just young people. I'm almost 50, so, you know, some of the older and younger people. And so maybe that gives me a little bit of hope.
I think I have more hope than most people. I mean, I'm sort of an optimist by nature, but one of these things I keep looking at is Egypt. Now, they just had the biggest, you know, gathering of people that are standing up for what they believe in the streets in all of human history. And they had a problem where their government wasn't following the laws. And that's really the same problem we have. And so I think if, I don't know, I'm active in a lot of, like, circles that you guys are, you know, with the Second Amendment stuff and all these websites and forums and things. And there's a lot of people that are waking up. I personally can say I woke up, you know, back in the Bush years, and I went, whoa, what is this Patriot Act thing? And then I started thinking, and I started paying attention. I got involved. I have a lot of friends, and you guys do too, that don't pay attention. And it's, you know, it's still sort of like culturally polite not to talk about politics, but there's a lot of people waking up. And like you said, with the Hunger Games and things, a lot of young people are having this anti-establishment thing put in them, and I think that's very good. And looking at what happened in Egypt, I actually have a friend in Egypt who posts to his Facebook page, and they were in these demonstrations on the street. And these are just regular people. They have jobs, you know, they have to go to school, they have to buy groceries, and yet they still found the time to do this. And I think that can happen. I think before we have a war in this country, God forbid, I would like that never to happen, I think there might be a time when we get enough numbers of men and women who just go, you know, enough is enough. We're following the laws the best we can, but our government is not following the laws. Voting isn't going to help because, you know, you're just literally not following the rules. There's corruption, there's all this stuff, and there might become a point where we gather in such large numbers that it makes a difference. Now, I know that kind of would take a lot of people, and I don't know what that looks like, but you could say, you know, the birth of the Tea Party was maybe the very, very beginning of that. Maybe it's the very leading edge of this movement that hopefully will grow into something the size of Egypt, where enough people say enough is enough. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I'd like to hit on something that you said there, and this is one of the reasons that I'm more pessimistic. Going back to, and I couldn't remember who said it earlier, but with over 50% of the people on some type of government assistance, and that number getting bigger and bigger, with our educational system failing, you know, putting people out of high school that can't even read or write. It seems like a dumbing down, and something that you mentioned, those people in Egypt, these are, like you said, these are people with jobs out there protesting, regular people with jobs. Part of what I do not like about this country is we have entirely too many people without jobs that are content to stay that way. Yes, there's a ton of people, and I was unemployed myself for a little bit after the recession hit, but there's a ton of people that were unemployed before, and there's a ton of people unemployed now, that don't want to go back to work, that want to sit there and collect their welfare, collect their Obama phone, get their food stamps, get their WIC, get their earned income credits. And, it's basically, just like someone else had mentioned, it's the government dumbing down. It's buying the votes. It's buying the people off from standing up for themselves and taking this government back the way it's supposed to be, ruled by law, by the Constitution. And that's why I'm pessimistic, because there's a lot more people like that than there are like yourself or myself who woke up and realized that, this country is not going in the direction that our forefathers intended it, and that's not a good thing.
But I've got a question for you, and I'm really neither optimistic nor pessimistic. I'm just waiting to see how it pans out. But I see a lot of signs on both sides, and I do understand where you're coming from, and it's exactly why there are times when I'm a pessimist about it myself. But let me ask you something. Something I've noticed: the media jumps on and highlights every issue that seems to be an illustration of whether it's stupidity or of corruption or of idiocy or anything that can make a news story where we shake our heads and wonder how fellow citizens can be so dumb or so criminal or something else negative. And that's very divisive, and there's something that gets overlooked, and it's that they pick out the sensational stories, but it also magnifies their effect. And the people who get the microphone and make inflammatory comments, like Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, they get the media attention, but they are the ones in the minority. And when you think of it, it's rather amazing that with all the dumbing down there is going on, all the money being spent to, demonize guns, all the push and media and misinformation and the concerted effort of so many big money and big agencies to take the people down that kind of path of government dependency and programs, somehow, in spite of that, there's a huge and growing everyday homeschool movement that can no longer be getting overlooked. There's a huge and growing number of not only gun owners but concealed carry permit holders who are getting training. There's a huge surge of gun sales. There's a formation of a Tea Party that was able to get candidates in Congress, and this is done against an enormous wave of everything that's supposed to tear those people down. And these are regular people with regular jobs who really have no intention of wanting to sign up to be activists, but somehow not only are they resisting the spoon-fed messages and the media sensationalism, but those movements are growing. And right now, the younger generation, for the first time in, 40 years, is more conservative as a group than their parents and support more restrictions on some things and less restrictions on others, kind of following a very conservative, both fiscally and socially program than the past, 3 or 4 generations have? And so that gives me a lot of hope, because how on earth are those people, that many people thriving and increasing every day, up against such huge, backlash, and I find that very impressive.
Yeah, I think people that listen to the media these days, listen to TV and the radio, they know. Everybody knows in the back of their heads. We're all savvy. We know it's a show. We know it's put onto us, and we know it's probably not all true. Some people believe some of it. Some people believe I think the people that believe all of it are fewer and fewer and fewer. And so, like you said, there's a lot of take the Occupy Wall Street movement. I hate to give them any credit, but this is a group of people that are going, wait a minute, there's this problem with the government taking money from corporations, and I would agree with them on that point. I probably don't have any other agreements with them, but it's still people that are going, hey, this isn't happening the way it's supposed to happen. And if you could focus all of these people in one way, if you look at the Revolutionary War, it was probably only a third of the colonies were even pro-independence. And so it doesn't take, I know the number 50% is huge, but 50% of America is a lot of people. And so even